Our next speaker does not need to be introduced, but what the hell, I'm going to introduce him anyway. This man helped create this club from the very grassroots many years ago, and today, despite us having a great membership base and a fantastic leadership team, he's still the lifeblood of this club, I believe. But trying to describe him in a few words, I don't think does him justice, so I won't try to do that any further. But I think in an essence, he can be described simply by, for me anyway, by the answer that he gave to when I asked him the question, what is the happiest moment in his life? To quote Tom, his answer was, the happiest moment in my life was when I asked Michelle to marry me, and she said yes. Although I loved her and had liked her for a while, our relationship had mostly been long distance, and I was not sure how she would respond to my proposal. Giving his speech project number 8, titled "What's Wrong with Me," would you please help me welcome Mr. Tom Bartkoske to the podium.
When you look at this, what color is the dress?
Gold.
I hear blue.
Gold.
I hear gold and white. Raise your hand if you think it's gold and white. Okay? Put those hands down. Raise your hand if you think it's blue and black. It's about 50-50. So, when you look at this dress and someone says, and you see it as blue and black, and someone says to you it's gold and white, what goes through your mind?
Crazy.
I'll tell you what goes through your mind is, what's wrong with you? Right? This became very famous last year. Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. Friends were arguing about it. Close friends were getting angry with each other. They're like, what's wrong with you? How can you see it that way? That's ridiculous. And you think, something's wrong up here. Maybe something's wrong with their eyes. But generally we think, what's wrong with their head? And so again, stand up if you think it's gold and white. If you think it's gold and white, stand up. Now those that are sitting and think it's blue and black, look at these people. And say, what's wrong with you? Exactly. Well, let's take a look at this next slide. There it is again. But it has to do with the transition. When you put these two images, when they change the color contrast, now you can see more clearly that on the left is
Gold and white.
gold and white, and on the right is
Gold and white.
gold and white, but darker. But you can more easily see the differences. Well, what happens with this is what we call the communication when we communicate with each other. Because we see or hear something. When we see or hear something, these are what we call the facts. But when we look at what we call the facts, the next step that we have is we tell ourselves a story. And based on the story we tell ourselves, then we begin to feel something. We feel something in our heart. And when we feel something, depending on what we feel, we take action. Last week, Alia shared a story, which I'm going to repeat for you right now. There was a man who got on the metro. As he got on the metro, he sat down and just kind of closed his eyes and just was lost. Meanwhile, his two young children were walking around and bothering people. They were knocking things off. They're pulling people's hair. They were taking their coats and yanking them. And passengers were getting visibly upset. And they began telling themselves a story. What story were they telling themselves, do you think?
What's wrong with them?
What's wrong with him? But more than that, what exactly was wrong with him? What thoughts were going through their heads?
Is he deaf?
Is he what?
Deaf.
Is he deaf? Maybe he's deaf.
He must be tired.
He must be tired. Oh, she's giving him benefit of the doubt.
He's not raising his kids properly.
Yeah, he's not raising his kids properly. He's a bad father. He doesn't care about his kids. In fact, he doesn't care about us, or he would be doing something. And if they tell themselves this story, what do they begin to feel?
Angry.
Anger. What else?
Disappointed.
Disappointment.
Frustration.
Frustration. Judgment. Condemnation. And if they feel this, what actions might they take? to maybe yell, to get upset, to smack those kids, not the kids, smack the father, do something. So they may take words or actions. And so someone went to this gentleman and said, do you see what's going on? And he said, oh, excuse me. We just came from the hospital where the children's mother passed away. Okay, now the facts haven't changed. The kids have still bothered people. They're still being loud. But what story are they telling themselves now?
Be patient.
Well, not so to themselves, but what story are they telling themselves about the father right now?
Poor guy.
Poor guy, yes. They're saying, oh, this poor man, these poor children. And now they tell themselves a different story. What do they begin to feel inside?
Sympathy.
Sympathy, compassion. So it's gone from condemnation to compassion. Right? The facts didn't change about what the children's behavior, but what did change was their understanding of it, and it affects the way they relate to the situation. So one of the things that we want to do when we see different things happen is always ask ourselves this question: why would a reasonable, rational, and decent person do what this person is doing? So it's an important question that we need to ask ourselves. When we take time to stop and ask ourselves this question, it changes the way we relate to people. And so I want to show you guys a short clip right now. And if you've seen this clip before, don't spoil it for the others, okay? And here we go. Okay, what's happening so far? So, we have a truck driver. He looks at what? A picture of someone. He looks at his watch and he sees, I've got time to go see somebody. Okay. What's happening now?
He saw some unfamiliar car.
Yes, he's come home and he's seen an unfamiliar car. What story is he starting to tell himself? Somebody's visiting his wife. That might be the story he's telling himself. Let's see. So, what's he feeling now? Angry. So, what's he going to do? What action will he take? Maybe go fight. What else?
He's in a cement truck, so that car was a convertible, so I can only imagine what's going on.
Oh, yeah, you can only imagine. Let's see what he does. So, how does he feel now?
Better.
A little bit better. He's got some revenge, right? But he doesn't know the full story. Let's see what happens next. So, in this situation, we see that when you take time to ask, why would my wife, who's a decent, rational, kind person, have this car in front of her yard, he may tell himself a different story, feel things differently, and take different actions. And I challenge each one of us to do that in the situations that we face in our lives. Whether it's, we talk about politics, why could you vote for that person? What's wrong with you? How could you believe that a book written 2,000 years ago still has relevance today? Who can trust the good classics? Who can trust the scriptures? And we think something's wrong with that person. Or maybe it's as simple as coming home and seeing a friend or family member and giving them the benefit of the doubt with some response that they may give us. It can be simple things or great things. But let us always remember, as human beings, we have the capacity to evaluate what's going on inside us and make a proper and right decision.